Oh, hey all, and welcome back. And I've got another tech block review for you all. This one is called the police set. Now, if you saw my other review of the robot set, which of course is more of a construction robot mech thing, it was actually a pretty cool design and a pretty decent set of blocks. So I thought I'd pick up another one. I got this one at Menards, which is a hardware store here in the Midwest. Quick look at the box. We have the cool looking robot, a police car, and I'm gonna assume that like the last one, it might not have instructions for the car mode. However, I did find on their website the instructions for the car mode. So let's go take this guy out of the package and see if he's worthy of our collection. So let's quickly look what's in the packaging. We've got a manual. If it's like the last one, it actually should be pretty decent. But like I said, no instructions for the car, but most likely on their website. We've got one loose piece and a variety of blocks. Now, one thing I do notice is that they have numbered the bags, so it kind of helps with the instructions. To a certain degree, it's not like perfect, but it gives you an idea of what order to open up a set of bags. So, more of this. Now, one thing I see in here that's unique is we have a sprue with some tools and items in there. One looks like an oil can, a power drill, a 4-way lug wrench, ratchet, some scissors, so that's kind of cool. And then we have this foil bag here, which I believe is probably going to be a minifigure. I didn't see anything about a minifigure, but it was the same deal with the construction set. We weren't aware of one until we opened it. And we have a little police officer. This actually looks a little bit better than the other one, and I noticed it also has the joints for the shoulders, which is a cool feature that we'll show later. So anyway, let's go ahead and get this guy built and see if he's worthy of our collection. And now that we have the build completed, I can say this was actually a pretty good build. It went together better than the construction set that I had reviewed last time. There are a couple notes about this though. Some things that might not have been completely clear in the instructions. I do recall that I believe when building part of the leg, that it was drawn incorrectly. They drew it as a single peg where it was actually dual peg. And then it doesn't mention it, but this piece here on the sprue is actually the one that's used as antenna. So if you're hunting in the bag trying to find that part, it's actually over here. Another thing that I found, I actually thought this was a defective minifigure. And what it turns out is that these joints are arm specific because I could not get one arm to assemble, and that was a problem. And speaking of the minifigure, that's actually one of the cool things about this. So it's okay looking. I actually think the body of this one looks better than the other one. And it was a little confusing at first because it almost looks like, well, which one's the abs? I mean, this definitely looks like abs, but this kind of looks like abs too. And so I ended up going this route just because the legs were pre-assembled this direction. But what I like is that we have a shoulder joint that can move out. It's very versatile. I do think that's really cool. I'd like to see more of that. The head's okay. He's got kind of an old school style hat. But for the most part, it's fine. It's a sufficient big figure. I didn't know it was going to be included, and it's fine. Let's see him next to the other one. He is better than the other one, but it's still just okay. We do have a few leftover pieces, including these, which are for the car mode. And like I said, the instructions are not included for the car mode in the booklet. But let's go ahead and get into the actual mech. And I really think this is an awesome design. Before we do too much, I'd like to compare it with the previous version. I actually assumed that the police version would be a little less substantial and smaller just because of the way that it was illustrated on the box. But it's a pretty beefy mech. I was actually a little concerned about the joints as well, but they're actually ball joints in all the legs except for the hips, which is a ratcheting joint. I was very surprised to see that. The elbows have a little bit of a weaker joint, but they're sufficient. That was one of the ones I was mostly worried about, but it's fine. It does the job. But they do look cool together. I thought that the construction mech was going to be my favorite of the two, but I think in the end, this police mech is my favorite. It sort of has a Patlabor vibe mixed with, I don't know, Transformers and a couple other animes. It just has a very cool look to it. So we'll go ahead and get this guy out of the way, Now let's go ahead and go over some articulation. The first one I want to talk about is the chest. And this build is actually a little bit smarter assembled than the construction one, but there is one area that is a little bit finicky, and it's because of what it does, and that is the chest opens up so that you can put the pilot in there. I really like that, though it's kind of got the paddle bore issue where it's kind of tight to fit in there. And so you'll see like the head exposed a little bit, which is probably one of the things I don't like. I mean, you can get them in there, but it's going to affect it a little bit. But it's cool that we can actually put a pilot in the mech. You'll have to mess with it some to get it just right, though, finding an angle for the hands and whatnot, just so you can close it all the way. Another note that is something I'll be concerned about is the neck. You don't really get any posability. You have kind of a joint that would allow for it, but there's no room for it. So I think taking a couple extra bricks and extending the base of where the neck connects, you can get a little bit more out of the head movement without changing the overall look of the mech. Let's go over some other articulation. We have ball joint in the ankle, which allows you to get some tilt. We have some ankle guards that actually are on a hinge that can move. And we have this part, this shin on a hinge, which I don't entirely know why, but it gives it a nice dynamic look. These legs are very thick, nice and beefy. That was one of the things I think is really interesting about the design, is they didn't have to make this substantial in mass. However, by doing so, it makes it look so much better. Got our ball joint in the knee. We do have our ratcheting hip. I will say this though, I was excited at first when I got these because I actually buy a lot of kits just to get these joints for doing custom robots. These tend to pop out though. You can already see a gap forming. When you start posing it too much, it will kind of push itself out. So you just have to be aware. You want to get a pose, make sure it's tight before you do anything. But we have the joint that allows outward movement, and we have a ratchet that allows forward and back. Rotation at the waist. We have ball joint in the shoulder, smaller ball joint at the elbow, and then a ball joint for the shoulder piece. The head is on sort of a hinge piece. However, the issue with that is you just really don't have a lot of places to move it. The gun is a pretty cool design. The way it's fixed, it's attached to the arm. It was pretty interesting to assemble, and this piece here is a pretty unique piece that might have some other uses as well. All the graphics are already printed on there, so there's no decals. We have a shield here, which would act as the windshield. The hands also have articulation. They're very basic, but they're fine. I mean, they do the role of being robot hands, though I might pull some hands that are a little bit more fist-looking off of other kits to mess around with. And the little antenna on the front and back can be, positioned in ways that are more aesthetically pleasing. Overall, I'm really digging the aesthetic. I think it's a cool mech. I'm glad I bought it. I think it was worth the price point, around $20 from Menards. There might be other places to get it, and I'll put a link to the company down in the description so maybe you can find it. There is one last thing that I want to talk about with this, though, before I go, because it's cool, but it's going to be a little bit messy. So let me get him back here. This is something I did not expect. So we have, this base piece that has articulation. We have some rotation of the turret. We have a part, and this is a piece that I've not seen, but I don't buy a lot of play type Lego. But when you twist this, he fires his missiles. And of course it breaks up the look once it's done, but it's really cool that it does that. I think that's a cool play factor, definitely something to consider. And of course you can hide that away in the back so it's not part of the design if you don't care for that. All that said, worth the money. It assembles well, looks good, and I'm pretty happy with it. So anyway, let us know in the comments below if this is worthy of your collection. Like and subscribe, and we'll see you all next time.